Hey, it's Mike from the Run Testers. In this video, we are going to speak about the Suunto 7. Now, when I say we, myself and Nick, Tom has also used the Suunto 7, but myself and Nick have probably run the most with it. So, we really want to talk about whether it's a good running watch, whether it's a good smartwatch, or whether it's a good smartwatch for running. So, we'll break down the kind of key areas in terms of design, the key features in terms of running, and whether you should actually buy it. So yeah, this is our Run Testers verdict on the Suunto 7.
So the Suunto 7 is designed to be like a smartwatch, like quite a premium smartwatch. So it's not quite as sporty in its design as something like the Suunto 9. That's really reflected in the fact it's got this huge AMOLED touchscreen, which smashes the battery life compared to a traditional sports watch. But puts it in line with other smartwatches that kind of around the day, and is obviously great fun and gorgeous to interact with on a day-to-day basis when you're flicking through the App Store on a Wear OS or something like that. It's quite a bulky watch still, though. It doesn't sit as close to the wrist as something like the Garmin Fenix. It feels a little bit like a normal Suunto in that regard. It's still very lightweight, so for running it's fine. You can get a nice tight fit. It doesn't feel uncomfortably bulky on your wrist. Haven't slept in it because the battery life is kind of so poor, like I was talking about. So I don't think it's any worries on that front. You'll be charging it anyway. And kind of as you're wearing it around the day, it doesn't feel uncomfortable at all. It's still a really lightweight watch. So it's got all the kind of essentials in terms of it's fully waterproof. It's got GPS built in, a heart rate monitor. So it's got all the hardware needed for it to be a top quality sports watch, as well as this kind of more kind of smartwatchy style features like this massive touchscreen. It's not quite as premium as something like the Tag Heuer Connected, which I'm wearing here, which is a really, really gorgeous luxury top-end smartwatch, but it does have a kind of a slightly smarter look than something like the Fenix, I'd say, and certainly other Suunto's other watches that puts it as something that you'd want to wear all the time.
Okay, so I'm going to have my take on the design. Obviously, Nick has covered a lot of ground already, but what I wanted to kind of say, kind of my first kind of reaction of using it and what it was like to run. I think the main thing for me is that this is probably Suunto's nicest looking watch that they've made. So I've got it in this kind of black, all black, and then kind of the Lumo kind of band on the back. There's also a range of different kind of colourways and straps and casings. Casings with like kind of bezels that are a little bit more showy, and just a little bit more stylish, and that's where Suunto wants to play a little bit more with this watch. They want to kind of be in that lifestyle space where Apple and Samsung and some other brands are, and to a degree, it kind of is successful in doing that. What I think is quite interesting is if you put the Suunto 7 next to the Suunto 9, you can see the design language, and the essence is still very sporty. You've got the kind of similar kind of big casing and that big screen. The Suunto 7 is lighter and thinner than the Suunto 9, and you definitely notice that. I found it a really comfortable watch to wear. I'm not a massive fan generally of bigger kind of watches, but it's been absolutely fine to wear. I've had no problems with the strap, and it's been generally kind of fine from that front. I think the touchscreen display, touchscreen displays on smartwatches have got so good in the last few years, and I've definitely put Suunto's one in the bracket or the kind of of the good smartwatch displays. It's bright, it's colourful, it's great for kind of looking at maps, which I'll get into later, and just generally, you're getting that top end kind of display that you'd want. Viewing angles are great in terms of when you're out and running and stuff. So no real complaints from the kind of build, the screen, comfortability. It's all been really good. The only other thing I wanted to kind of speak about is really the buttons. So we're getting 3 buttons, physical buttons on the right hand side, and you're getting one in the top left hand corner. Now that top one is interesting on the left because that's what activates a couple of the smartwatch features. So jumping into your kind of app tray, also activating Google Smart Assistant. So what I found with that kind of extra button is there's a little bit of a learning curve and remembering what does what. I found myself kind of pressing buttons thinking that was stop or start a workout, or just trying to get to the app drawer when it was the other button. So I definitely think it's a little bit of a learning curve in terms of understanding how things work and what operates what. But generally, in terms of a running watch, it was fine. Like it's a nice watch. I would have liked personally a more showy one to use, but this has been absolutely fine. I think Suunto have mainly achieved what they wanted to achieve from the design, and it'd be interesting if they stick to smartwatches, what they kind of do next on that front.
So kind of the key features of the Suunto are really broken down to the fact it's both a Google, Wear OS smartwatch, but still a Suunto sports watch, in that there is this kind of duality to the watch, in that Suunto put its own sports app on the watch, which is key because Wear OS hasn't really excelled in my eyes when it comes to sports tracking in the past in terms of the native offering there. So the sports app is designed by Suunto. You can obviously download third-party apps from the App Store, but Suunto's one is there and it's pretty damn good. But you do have access to the Google Play, so this is a fully fledged smartwatch that really differentiates it from kind of top-end Garmin's that have a few smart features like Garmin Pay and stuff like that, although that's really doesn't work very well. But it's a full Wear OS smartwatch. Now that does mean, well, where you're getting things like Google Pay and Google Play Music, you are losing a lot of battery life. Like this will last just a day kind of thing with regular use. Which is, it's not the end of the world for a smartwatch. You should make it really clear that it's not a traditional Suunto, which would last several days and was, favoured by ultramarathon runners as a result. You also get on here the Suunto's heat maps. Mike's going to dive into a bit more detail on those, but basically you can get locally downloaded heat maps of your area showing the most popular routes for different sports. Like so obviously I've got running set up on it, and you can just see orange lines about where runners most commonly run around you, which is handy if you're in a new place. Would say, so on the battery, coming back to battery life, it is a key thing on this watch. The first couple of days I wore it was absolutely terrible, and I was really starting to think this just wasn't going to be a successful device, but it really bedded in, and after that, even if I went for a long kind of 2-hour run with the screen set to always on, I was, comfortable knowing it was going to make it to the end of the day at least, and I just charge it again at night like you would with the Apple Watch or any other kind of top-end smartwatch. Even the ones that say they have 2 or 3 days of battery life, if you're actually using them for sports regularly, you are only going to get 1 day out of them generally. The fact that you've got a lot of Google and kind of Suunto stuff going on does mean the setup's a massive faff. Like you've got to kind of access both Wear OS apps, set up Google Fit, set up Google Assistant, whilst also setting up by the Suunto app. It took a long time and it wasn't flawless in how well it worked. That's a bit annoying, but at the end of the day, I do think it's a good thing that Suunto have handled the sports tracking on the watch, because that does mean you get a slightly richer experience than you would on some other Wear OS watches that I've tried.
Okay, so Nick's kind of already established a lot of the kind of key features from a smartwatch and kind of a running perspective, so I won't go over too much of what he said, but what I will say is I've probably had a very similar experience in terms of having kind of Google software and Suunto's software in one place. Now, my initial fear was that it was going to be a big, massive mess and kind of jumping from one to the other. It wasn't really like that. I mean, you're spending most of the time in Suunto's kind of sports software, and then the other stuff is kind of left to Google, and there's places where it kind of overlaps weirdly, but not in a really kind of annoying way day to day. I really liked what Suunto have done with the app on here. I used it more than I did Google's. I think kind of big points for them for kind of getting that aspect right, and if anything, it's a shame that Suunto didn't do all of this watch, and it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they had done all of the software themselves. But they've gone with Google to get those features that are already kind of existing in that ecosystem, and I understand it, but it would have been nice, to have seen them kind of do it on their own, because I think what I've seen in this watch has been good from a Suunto perspective. What I have liked, what I found is interesting, is the mapping. So there's a couple of things around mapping. So obviously Suunto's kind of heritage is navigation, so it's quite nice to see some mapping features on its smartwatch. So what does that kind of look like? So you're getting the ability to view maps with breadcrumb trails in real time, which is really nice, and the touchscreen comes in nicely in terms of being able to zoom and swipe them through, which is quite nice. You've also kind of got Suunto's heat maps, which is something that's been on their kind of web platform to see the most popular kind of spots for running or cycling, and you've got that on there as well. And then you've also got the ability to download maps offline, and store them offline and then kind of go, and you don't have to have your phone. Now the way you do that is you essentially on the watch you kind of crop out or zoom out an area on a map wherever you are. So I think the maximum is 50 kilometers, which is is a big enough space. Now when you put your the watch back on its charger, and you're on Wi-Fi, which is important, and you won't be able to do it without the Wi-Fi, it will sync that map onto your watch. So next time you pick it up off the charger, you'll have that map on there. And to be honest, when I've had Wi-Fi somewhere, it's been fine. I did have one instance where I was in a hotel abroad and I was trying to get to the hotel Wi-Fi, and I was struggling to do it on a phone. And I tried to do it on a watch. I just didn't have much luck. So ultimately, I couldn't use the feature. In terms of the syncing of the maps, it's pretty quick. Like, I've had a little look, and depending on the size, in terms of distance, it's generally fine. And then once it's on the watch, you can kind of select it and basically follow it. And I think on this watch, maps are really nice to follow. It's a nice feature to have. It's not a new feature on kind of smartwatches. The Casio Pro Trek series have been able to do that, but I think it's been well implemented on Suunto's watch, and I think it's a nice feature to have. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which I think good to give my personal experience on the feature side, is battery. So you're not getting huge amounts of battery life like you would from a top end Suunto or Suuntos we've seen before, and what I found is that it's okay. The first couple of days it really wasn't very good, so I was doing half an hour 40-minute runs, and it was with the screen off, and it was probably 10-15%. When I put the screen on during a similar session, it was about 25% off of the battery, which is huge. If you want to use it for the rest of the day and you're kind of struggling, you'll probably get a day, but you'd probably need to restrict yourself in terms of what you're using. You could get a couple of days, and it did improve after my first couple of days with it, but ultimately you're not getting weeks, you're not getting a week-long battery life, you're getting a couple of days, which is good for a smartwatch from kind of Google and Wear OS, but you've got Garmin smartwatches and Fitbit, and who are offering longer, and especially for a Suunto, if you're used to Suunto and what the kind of battery life kind of expectations are, you're just not going to get that from this watch. Those are the kind of key features. Nick's kind of gave over the main stuff already, the main stuff. Let's kind of get into what the running kind of performance is like with the Suunto 7.
So when it comes to running performance, basically you hit the start button, and you get a choice of different running modes. If you ever used Suunto before, they have these kind of thing where they, instead of just letting you swap the modes around a bit more freely yourself, you have like running race, running basic, running intervals, which I don't like at the best of times. And in this, it's not great because you cannot change the stats on offer in each of those. So really, if you don't want what's on running basic, which is kind of your standard distance, pace, time, heart rate. If you want lap pace, for example, you have to go to a different running mode entirely. And I run by lap pace mainly entirely, so I'm nearly always using the race mode, which is a bit silly. I don't know why you wouldn't have customizable sports modes on a watch that is still made by Suunto, who obviously make proper sports watches. Other than that, so once you're up and running, every single one of those running modes has access to the heat maps within the run, and that's quite cool. You can also come in and out of the app, so you can go to find your music and stuff like that. You can't store music offline on the watch, actually. It's one thing quick to say, it's unless you have a Google Play music account. So things like Spotify and that, you can't sync across playlists, which you can do with Garmin's and Samsung watches. Other terms of running performance, in terms of like your staples, GPS is consistently slightly long. I found this, Mike found this, other people I know tried this, what you found this, just a little bit long. It's not enough that it's drastically awful, but every single run is a couple of percent longer than it should be. Obviously that does affect your real-time pace a little bit, so you might think you're suddenly killing it in terms of your pace, but actually watch is just being slightly generous in terms of distance covered. Heart rate, on the other hand, is a complete write-off. I didn't have one run, I don't think, where this was accurate. With other Suuntos in the past, what I found is it locked onto my cadence, so I had a very high heart rate and I was like, oh, what's going on? For this, it was just completely random. I had no idea what number was going to turn up each time I ran with it. It's a fairly bulky watch, not the end of the world, and this happens in a lot of watches, but crucially in every other watch I've tried, you can pair an external heart rate monitor if heart rate is important to you, and it is important to me, so I will pair a chest strap so I get a more accurate result. You cannot pair external external sensors with the Suunto 7 as of now, which is really poor in my opinion. You can do that with pretty much every watch, like the Apple Watch, other smartwatches, obviously other sports watches, every other Suunto. I'm really unimpressed by that, especially as the heart rate monitor is so poor. It really should be able to pair external stuff to it. It might be something that comes in the future, doesn't right now. Other things that are missing in terms of running performance that annoyed me, you can't, even though you've got these amazing heat maps, you can't actually set up a route and follow it on the Suunto 7. So you can't go to the app or the website, create a route, beam it to the watch and have it on your wrist just to follow a breadcrumb trail. You've just got to use these heat maps. Don't like that. Like, the maps are on there. Why on earth could you not create a route to follow on your wrist? Heat maps are kind of all well and good at times. Oh, it's quite interesting to follow a heat map, but really a lot of times you want to use those heat maps to create a route and then go and follow it return by turn. I think that's a bit poor. It's not there. And also, despite the fact there is an intervals running mode, you cannot create an intervals workout or any kind of customized workout on the watch. Not brilliant, especially if there is an intervals mode. So you can't have beep, you've done a minute, now walk for a minute or whatever, or 10 reps of 400 meters. You just can't do any of that. Again, it's a feature that's really available on really cheap basic sport watches these days. This is a smartwatch, and it's not something that's available as standard and something like the Apple Watch either. But soon to have made this, I feel like they could have really taken the fact they have all this experience in sports watches and shoved it all into a watch and made it a really amazing run tracker / smartwatch. That said, all these things could come to the watch in the future. So if Suunto updates it, if they bring, I think, customizable workouts, the ability to purse sensors, the ability to change your sports mode, and breadcrumb navigation to the watch, it will be really, really good. A really competitive offering in terms of both sports watches and smartwatches. Right now, it doesn't hold a candle to sports watches, in my opinion. It's just kind of benefiting from the fact that there's quite weak competition in terms of run tracking available from other Wear OS watches. So the run performance was kind of fine. If you're a regular Suunto user, I think you will be disappointed. If you're coming to it as a smartwatch user, yeah, it's pretty good. Like, you get white clear stats, you've got those amazing heat maps, even though you can't, create routes. But it is lacking a little bit in terms of what Suunto know people want from run tracking and what I think they could have put on it from the start. So that was a bit of a shame.
Okay, so let's get into running performance. And having spoken to Nick from his experience, I think we've had very similar kind of results in terms of what we've got from the Suunto 7. So I had a similar experience in terms of the GPS, just a little bit over compared to another watch, which a Garmin that I've kind of come to rely on, and also another phone app where I was tracking the runs. Not massively out, but was always out a little bit, enough to kind of be irritating, and obviously it impacted on the other metrics that the watch recorded. In terms of heart rate, not fantastic either. Like Nick, I have used Suuntos before where actually the heart rate performance has actually been pretty good. With this watch, though, it wasn't really the same. It was definitely kind of, I had the issues that I've had with smartwatches before with heart rate monitors where they spike sometimes wildly or take a long time to kind of drop back down to a chest strap. So I tested it against a Polar H10 and it didn't really give me the kind of reliable data or accuracy that I could really rely on. And then obviously with Suunto's, and this is where it's confusing, so Suunto's kind of sports stuff don't really have the ability to, it seems, to kind of pair a chest strap. But I think if you go in and kind of dig into kind of the Google side of things or some of the third-party apps, you should be able to do that, which is, it's confusing, and it's a shame that Suunto hasn't done that when they've done that for all their other watches. So yeah, from a running perspective, it wasn't fantastic. I mean, it was fine to wear, and the screens were easy to kind of absorb, and the information that you get, as Nick said, it's not very customizable, which is not what you expect from a sports watch, to be honest. And generally, I think my impressions when I finished it around was it felt very, very familiar in a bad way, where I've used a lot of smartwatches that are running Google Wear OS where I don't expect much from them because they're not sports watches and they don't deliver. Now this is a sports watch, this is from a sports company, and I didn't feel like the data was amazing, which is a shame really, because I was expecting big things and it's not really what I got from this watch. So from a running perspective and personally, it wasn't amazing for me. I don't think it was amazing for Nick. So yeah, we're kind of sum up our verdict. I think you're probably going to get a sense of what we're going to say on that front.
So when it comes to verdict, whether you should buy this watch, basically I wouldn't buy this watch. For me, the first and foremost, most important thing in any watch I have is how good is it at tracking runs, and this is not up to scratch. You can get the Garmin 35 or 45 or cheap Suuntos or cheap Polos, cheap Chorus's watches that do a lot more in terms of run tracking, even to the point of just having customizable sports modes. So for me, it's too far short on that front to impress, especially at the price. It's very expensive. If you think about the fact that there are watches available for 200, 300, £300 less that do a lot more in terms of run tracking. If you are hoping that this is going to be a great run tracker, you are going to be let down. Suunto could update all those things, the things I mentioned in the kind of the running performance section of this. If those all arrive, this will be a very compelling run tracker because you do also have that fantastic screen and the heat maps, which are a pretty unique feature to have them on the watch in the way that Suunto has presented it. I know other brands do have heat maps, but it's not quite as well done as on here. So really, where it's going to succeed is purely as a smartwatch that's pretty good at run tracking. If you have an iPhone, I will say the Apple Watch is still better on run tracking and cheaper as well. But in terms of the kind of other offerings that you get on Android and Wear OS and from other brands like Samsung that use their own operating systems, I'm hand over to Mike to really kind of set out where the Suunto 7 fits among them and why actually although I've hammered it a little bit on the running performance, it is still quite a competitive watch if you do want a Wear OS watch that does have good run tracking.
Okay, so Suunto 7, is it a good smartwatch for running? Is it a good running watch? My answer to that would be it's not great. It's good, but it's not amazing. And I was expecting a bit more from Suunto, kind of entering in this space where there is an opportunity for something like a Suunto smartwatch. But it's just things that kind of let it down. Ultimately, it wasn't massively reliable in terms of the tracking, the experience of the software. While I got used to it, wasn't great and a bit fragmented, where the software without Suunto stuff was already a little bit of a mess. You throw something else new into it and it's a whole different thing. I think it got a lot right in terms of design, and it's very different to anything else that's out there. But there are better options. Now I know Nick has gone into some of the running watch kind of options. Now you're looking, this watch is £429, $499. That is a lot of money for a smartwatch. Now you can, if it was me and somebody was asking me what is the kind of best smartwatch for running, I would say the Apple Watch. Whether you go for the 3 or the 5, you're getting a really good running experience. And you're probably getting similar battery life, but you're getting a better software, just easy to use, more reliable in terms of the accuracy. But that's obviously if you own an iPhone. If you don't own an iPhone, then I think you can probably look at something like the Garmin Venu, which is again cheaper. I think the sports tracking reliability is better, and just generally I think you're getting a better package in terms of what you want from a running watch that is a smartwatch. The smartwatch features are okay on the Garmin, but you're getting everything that kind of you'll get here, and in aspects actually more as well. So for me, I personally wouldn't buy it. Probably wouldn't recommend it. If you're looking for a smartwatch for running, and you've got an iPhone, I would say get an Apple Watch. If you haven't got an iPhone, I would probably say something like the Garmin Venu is a good fit if you care about the sports tracking, and I think the design is nice on that watch as well. So I think the Suunto 7 verdict from myself and Nick is it's okay, it's not amazing, and just be aware of that, and that's something we want to make you aware of, and just our experiences of running with it. Yeah, so that is our take on the Suunto 7. As always, you can like and subscribe, but I hope you enjoy the video. Obviously, any comments in the section below, as usual, if we didn't kind of answer any of that stuff. And yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.